have had the opportunity to promote this event tonight because many people, and I take a look at Learn, who are out there every day trying to raise levels of consciousness on serious societal issues. And then we've got an attorney who graduated from Bentley but left town. And I don't know, there were 4 women here that dated him in high school. The word is that he came back here today to make apologies. I thought it was to come back to say hello to all of you, but that is so not true. So let me just, first of all, if you haven't been here at the Orchid Brunch, let me tell you, they are the gemstone and best kept secret in Livonia. They haven't been open all that long. I highly recommend it. And if you would welcome lady up front is Lena. They make the absolute best pancakes and French toast in the entire city. And then we're fortunate to have Rebecca, Gigi, and Matilda waiting on us tonight. So thank you. When a business in town, this brand new, decides that they would like to just donate an evening, open up, because they close at 3, come back and open up for you, that speaks highly to me about them. You know, I'm from North Carolina, so I'm not going to talk too much about my favorite state, but I've read many of those books that he's got over here, and just to let you know, Learn, raise your hand. There we go, Learn in Livonia. If you want a book, they'll take cash because all the money goes to Learn. They've got a Venmo and a PayPal there. No matter what you want to pay to make a donation, it goes to Learn, and that's awesome. Let me introduce, I'm co-sponsoring this tonight with my good friend Ed Gonzalez from the Livonia Historical Society, which, by the way, is the fastest growing service organization in our city, that in 3 years they have taken 30,000 students on a tour of Greenmead and raised $45,000 in order to see that this program, which had been curtailed 10 years ago, was revised. Would you join in welcoming with me the president of the Livonia Historical Society?
Thank you, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for coming. I got a couple of my predecessors here, Mr. Jim Connell, Mr. Bob Legal, so it's a historical night here at the Orchid. We got a very special evening here with Mr. Alex Charns, and we're grateful that everybody could be here. Bill mentioned one of the programs that we had, and he's a big help in keeping that going too. And we also have some information on each table about our programs. We have a historical speaker series at our society. We do that at Greenmead. And if you need any more information, our website is Livonia History Society, MI.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate it. And on the table, there are 3 books. My partner, Kathy Vincitelli, and I put together a book called The Best Kept Secrets. Each table's got one. Take it. It's free tonight. Otherwise, groups, we sold 1,000 of them within 3 weeks. I kept a few for nights like tonight. They're yours. Take it. Also, those of you that are Bentley graduates, there they are, the ones that rejected Alex. This is from our dedication of the historical marker a year ago. Those are free. You can take those as well. The gentleman that called me up 3 months ago and said his best friend in high school was going to be in town visiting his son Leo. And so Leo, say hi to everybody. That's Leo.
Hi, Leo.
So he said, why don't we take a look at how it is to be a citizen activist in today and carry it forth not only for a decade, but 2 decades, but 3 decades, but for 40 years he looked to research the stench in the FBI and the United States Supreme Court. Those are my words, Alex, and if I get sued on it, you can protect me because you're an attorney. So, but I started reading his books. This man understands the epitome of being involved in civil rights issues, fighting for diversity and fighting for the rights of all people, regardless of your persuasion. And I'm just so tickled that he graduated from Bentley. I'm Franklin. Today I'm going to accept the fact that I'm acknowledging Bentley High School. And I will accept it, that's right. But would you join, we've got a gentleman by the name of Steve Spreitzer, who not only worked on the Bentley dedication, active in the Bentley, but also, more importantly, just retired in August from the Michigan Roundtable, and now he's working with an interfaith council. But there are few people in this town that have been dedicated to providing people with the opportunity to have life and liberty without having government being oppressive. He brings people together of all persuasions. Would you join in welcoming a recent addition into the Livonia Hall of Fame just 2 years ago, my friend and soon to be all of your friends, Steve Spreitzer.
Well, Alex, I want to thank you for accepting the invitation to come back home. Bill, for your help. Lena, for bringing, and crew. I don't remember all your names.
Thank you.
And then Albanians, they would say Palamandidi, Palamaniers. For those of you who came, many of you I know, I encouraged you to come, and so as we're going to talk about and introduce you to Alex and hear from him, so many of you could get up here and inspire, give us that inspiration that we need. So don't let me forget that, because there's a lot of good stories to tell. But thanks for joining us tonight and just learning about this guy named Alex Charns. So, you know, we grew up together, right? And then he went off to college, and a different side started emerging. You know, what happened? What I believe is that the theologian Thomas Donahue said, "Love is fidelity to the demands of a relationship." Right? Like fidelity to the demands of a relationship. Yet we live in a place where the poverty we experience in this hyper-segregated region is a lot of us just don't know the other. So if you don't know the other, how are you going to be faithful to them? So Alex's life, and I'll give you a few vignettes, it really epitomizes that, where he opened his big heart to people who were different from him. And then from knowing them, it led him to do things that he probably might not, maybe wouldn't have done. But I'm just getting these residual benefits and inspiration from things he was just out there doing it. And throughout my life, he's encouraged me to keep going. And so, and obviously there's some others in this room have done the same. But this guy, I'm so glad you came. You know, and I would say, like, when I talk about his big heart, it's even his ancestors, getting to know them, have shaped him in a way to be bold and to stand up against injustice. You know, he'll talk about that, but learning about that and chatting with him, just, oh my gosh. You know, the Native Americans have a saying, you know, go to your heart where your ancestors wait to speak. And this guy did that. And you know, and at MSU, you know, he learned of the plight of the LGBTQ students that he was maybe in the weight room with. And here I am at home I couldn't even spell homophobia, but that was me as a kid out of college. And here he is standing up for them. And, you know, the people he represented as a lawyer informed him. You know, the peace activists that led him to Fort Bragg to get arrested, to challenging the training of Salvadorian death squads, you know, put his life, his liberty on the line, almost wasn't able to take the bar. You know, so, you know, that quality of having a big heart and then the ability to be faithful to what we hear from each other. I think we need a lot more of that. So Alex, thanks for coming and giving us some of that inspiration.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about secrets, family secrets, some of my own secrets, police secrets, and FBI secrets. And a lot of these secrets I wrote about or tried to write about, but secret number one, I found the Holocaust in my family's basement. It was 1962. This was 31646 Stone Street, Merriman and Schoolcraft. And for some reason, my basement was a scary place to me when I was a kid. And in it, I found a book called I Survived Hitler's Hell. And it was written by A.P. Vyazdovsky. And I had no idea who Vyazdovsky was. I had no idea how to pronounce it, because my name was Charns. And that was before I was a reader. But on the cover was this twisted red cross, a swastika. I didn't know what that was. And there was a man about to be guillotined, and there was a soldier behind. And I opened that book to the picture section, and there was a pretty little girl about my age. And she was atop a pile of bodies. She was dead too. And that freaked me out. To this day, I mean, it kind of gets me upset thinking about that picture and the other pictures, and I went running out of that basement. And I think when I became a writer, a researcher, a seeker of uncovering the truth was in that basement when I was 6 years old. I don't have many memories back that far, but that memory I will never, ever, ever forget. And what I learned as I got older, made a trip to Poland with my mother in 1989. We were cracking down on solidarity again. We went and we saw my mom's house, this house, in Suwałki, Poland. And this picture was taken in about 1942. My grandfather, A.P. Vyazdovsky, Alexander, Agnes, my grandmother, Basha, she went by Basha then, Barbara, and my Uncle Richard. And we walked down the lane, we went to this very house where I learned my grandfather sent my 12-year-old mother to the end of the lane to watch for the Gestapo and the SS. My uncle, who was a teen, had been arrested with the rest of the high school class because they all worked in the underground. My grandfather had an illegal radio, which was a capital crime for a Pole to have, and he had locked the door. And he sends my mom out to watch for the Nazis, and he's listening to the radio. And of course, the Nazis do show up, and she's banging and banging on the door, and he can't hear her because he's listening to the radio. So they kick it in, they arrest him in front of her, and she won't see him for another 5 years because he was convicted of treason against the Third Reich, and among other things, working in an underground railroad, helping his Jewish neighbors escape to Lithuania. The Poles in his group, he had an American passport, which is a long story I won't get into, and his death sentence was commuted to 7 years in a penitentiary. He was in Königsberg, Prussia, for the bulk of the war. So I, pretty much my entire life, I've been trying to get to the truth of what happened during the war and what my family's role in it was. And so I learned such things as my uncle was tortured in Pawiak prison in Warsaw. He was taken away from the family. He, for some reason, wasn't prosecuted. One of my aunts was taken as a slave to Germany. My mom missed school the day all her classmates were taken for slaves. So she survived the war. I read Polish histories. My mom translated the Polish into English. And I did Freedom of Information Act requests to the FBI to learn about my grandfather. And one of the wonderful things is I found, well, everything they told me about their history was true. There weren't any lies and I Survived Hitler's Hell, or the other books my relatives wrote. But what I found out is something that still confounds me to this day about my grandfather and the other people in the underground. They were rabidly anti-Semitic. They were anti-Semites. My grandfather, before the war and after the war, wrote horrible things about Jewish people. And here's a man who risked his life, my mom's life. Everyone that worked in that underground was subject to being executed, and most of the people that worked with them in the underground were executed. And you had, I still don't understand why someone with his bigotry would save his neighbors except his heart. He grew up a Catholic, and he, I believe, thought the Jewish people in his town were still his neighbors, even though he had these bigoted views, and that they were his Poles, they were his Jews, and that it was this feeling of we're all in it together now, this is wartime, so we're gonna put our petty disagreements aside. But it still confounds me. And in my family, there's some disagreement about whether I should have exposed my grandfather in this way, because he was a hero. There's no question he was a hero. He risked his life to save his neighbors. But I'm proud to say that this book, Listening to Chopin While Fighting Nazis, was donated by a Jewish family whose relatives were murdered at Auschwitz. It was donated to Yad Vashem. And it was one thing my mom always talked about, wanting our family to be righteous Gentiles on the Book of Honor in Jerusalem, which never happened because we didn't have the eyewitnesses. But her story did get to Yad Vashem, and I'm happy it happened. I'm sorry that she wasn't alive to learn of that, but I believe, as they say, may her memory be a blessing. Other people in other cultures say presente. She's here, she's with me now, she's with all of you, and that's one of my proudest achievements as an adult, is having this book at Yad Vashem. So, I got ahead of myself because I didn't even tell you about Jackson Elementary. Or the fact that before I could read, I have to be in the turtle group. I was in the turtle group. They did that back then. I was a slow learner. I was a slow reader. And that really angered my mom. She was an elementary school teacher. So that next summer, you can imagine what happened to me. So I wasn't at grade level. Of course, I was above grade level when she got through with me. But I'm not sure I saw the outside of that house on Stone Street after she got through with me. So Jackson, Riley, Bentley, grad in 1974. I finally got out of there after chasing Tom Posey around on the cross-country course, and all of you were there with me. Michigan State for a year. Then I transferred to University of California System, graduated from Berkeley with a social work degree, which I put to good use in my law practice. I'm probably more of a social worker than I'm a lawyer sometimes. But I went to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill for law school, and something happened that resonated with my family's background and with how I was going to view law for the rest of my life. And that was the Greensboro Massacre. So I don't know if you folks remember November 4, 1979, my first couple months in North Carolina. My mom already said, in the South, they're gonna kill you. You know, with your views, you're not gonna survive. Klansmen and Nazis got together for the first time in history in a caravan, and they were well armed, and they had a police informant in the lead car. And they drove into an African American neighborhood, and they gunned down 5 Communist Workers' Party members in that neighborhood in broad daylight with TV cameras rolling. So what happened in state court on the criminal charges? They were found not guilty. What happened in federal court on the criminal charges? Not guilty. Again, this was all on videotape. It wasn't until one of the widows sued. She was a doctor. Her husband, who was shot to death, was a doctor. She won a verdict in civil court against the Greensboro police and the police informant that led them into that housing project. That police informant had been an FBI informant in prior years, an informant against the Klan. There was no policeman present. They were all at lunch. So how well did that informant do? Not very well. So I became very active on campus on that case and other things, which led me to Fort Bragg in 1982. And was it very smart to get arrested right before graduation of law school? Probably not. People told me, why don't you wait? Once you're a member of the bar, they won't kick you out. So I wasn't a very good client. I didn't listen. I organized a protest. And the reason, they were training Salvadoran troops at Fort Bragg, an hour away from where I lived. And those Salvadoran troops were implicated in the assassination of Archbishop Romero while he said Mass in San Salvador. He was saying Mass in a church. They were implicated in the rape, torture, and murder of 4 Catholic church women in El Salvador. And Father Berrigan, Daniel Berrigan, the poet and activist, had spoke at campus. And what he had to say and what my relatives had to say to me is, what are you doing about this? So we blocked off the main roadway on to the base. We were convicted of all things, impeding traffic, but it was a federal base, and there was a right-wing prosecutor who wanted to make a name for himself, so he prosecuted us. And again, I wasn't a good client, so I was told, just plead guilty, you won't get any jail time.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a record. What did we do? We did the necessity defense. We were showing how we were trying to prevent the greater evil. We had an expert about what's happening in El Salvador. And that magistrate, I told about my family's history, and he called us, he said, you're no better than Nazis because you're trying to impose your will on other people. So he gave us 90 days active. We did some time in local jails, and then we did a little protest of our own in the Sampson County Jail with Sheriff W.C. Fan, which he was a big boy, your classic Southern sheriff, and we said we're gonna call our lawyer. So we get the phone, we called WRAL, which was a rock station, and they had news. And we told them we might be calling, and they did a taped interview with me, and we complained that we were crammed in a tiny cell, that people were sleeping on the floor, that we had no soap, we had no toilet paper, and it was just a mess. So the U.S. Marshals came the next day, and they were not happy, and they drove us up to Petersburg, Virginia, where I continued to not be a very good client, and I called the North Carolina State Bar, and I told them I couldn't make the morals hearing because I was in federal prison. And I called collect. That's how they found out. So I continued not being a good client, and I wrote an op-ed about what the bar was doing, violating my First Amendment rights. That unlike the president of the bar at the time, who was charged with embezzling money, millions from his trust account, stealing from his clients, I was just peacefully protesting, and I did my time. So they said, we'll let you take the bar exam, but we're not gonna tell you if you passed. So I took the bar exam, and there was no pressure, because I just got out of prison, and they weren't gonna tell me if I passed. So I figured I'd never be a lawyer. I looked for a job. Legal aid wouldn't hire me. The public defenders wouldn't hire me. North Carolina Prisoner Legal Services wouldn't hire me. No one would hire me. I couldn't get interviews. But this little law firm, Ann and Tom Laughlin and Laughlin, they thought it was the coolest thing that I just got out of prison. So they hired me as a paralegal. They helped represent me. I appealed, and 6 months later I got in, and I've been practicing law for the 43 years since then. They did criminal defense. They did criminal defense, they did death penalty work, and they did police brutality work back in 1982. No one in town did that. And they were white people. And I say that coming from Livonia, and at that time, you know, imagine me 40 pounds lighter. I was a skinny white boy from Livonia. And boy, did I have a lot to learn in a racially diverse city of Durham, about the size of Livonia, but very different. I didn't have a classmate that was African American. In fact, I don't know whether there was any African Americans in Livonia at the time. There might have been one family, but I never met them. 2%. I never met them. I had no cultural understanding of the situation I was in as a lawyer. And I did my best. And I had some pretty awesome folks teaching me. And one was Karen Bethea-Shields, Karen Galloway, who represented Joanne Little. Joanne Little was charged with murdering a jailer who was trying to rape her in a place called Washington, North Carolina, back in the early 70s. Karen went to Duke Law School, and when she was 26 years old, she argued the Joanne Little closing argument. She got a not guilty. It was a case that had international fame, and she was one of my teachers. And she worked on cases with me. In one case, I memorialized in the Black Madonna about Margaret Dukes and Rita Scarlett. They were nurses, and what they taught me, it wasn't safe for two African American women within the site of Duke Hospital in the VA to walk outside their own home after dark. And what happened to them, they were taking a walk, and Rita was pregnant, Margaret was not. The primary target team van came squealing up to them looking for 18 to 21-year-old black males. They're both middle-aged African American women. They started roughing up Rita, who's pregnant. Margaret intervened, and she said, "You're not touching my sister." They pick her up, they body slam Margaret to the ground, they handcuff her, they throw her in the van, they charge her with resist delay an officer, and they threaten at 55 miles an hour driving down to the police station with throwing her out if she doesn't tell them who the drug dealers are. She didn't know who the drug dealers are. She was going for a walk in her own neighborhood. She was found not guilty, and then that's when I got involved. And the secret in that case was that she had filed an internal affairs report with the Durham police. And the miracle of all miracles was that they found her Fourth Amendment rights were violated, that excessive force was used against her and her sister. And then the higher-ups told the sergeant at Internal Affairs, "You gotta change that. They're gonna sue, and they're gonna clean our clock." Well, it took us 2 years and 20 depositions and my credit card, 2 of them using them to pay the $10,000 fees because I couldn't get a line of credit, because who's gonna give a line of credit to someone like me in Durham, North Carolina in the 80s? So we proved that they had lied, that they had kept the secret, and we got the biggest financial settlement in a police misconduct case in the history of Durham up to that time. Those depositions are videotaped. They're at the Durham Public Library now. And I'm proud to have represented Margaret and Rita, and that they taught me a lot about what I needed to know. Now, one of the ways that I thought I could educate folks about the criminal injustice system, as I call it, and I don't think that's an exaggeration, is by writing fiction. So I wrote The Black Madonna, I wrote other legal thrillers, and they have 2 characters that are from Michigan. One is Katarzyna Star-Gwiazda. Gwiazda means star in Polish, and her nickname is Star. She's Jewish, and Zenko Luczek is Catholic. And they're from Hamtramck. And they come from a Polish neighborhood, and they end up together in Durham. And they do court-appointed work, they represent people on death row, and they sue cops. And one of the cases I write about with both of them as protagonists, Bones of Black Saints, based on a true story of Carlos Riley, who was a young black man who was stopped for allegedly squealing his tires. It was a drug officer in plain clothes, without a body-worn camera, no in-car camera, and he didn't call this stop in. What's he doing? Why didn't he call this stop in? Well, he wanted to search the car. Carlos said, "You're not searching my car, you don't have a warrant, and you don't have probable cause." And the officer pulled out his weapon. He was about to aim it, but he shot himself in the leg. And you can read about this in Slate magazine. You can see the YouTube videos of our closing arguments. It was a 3-week trial. It took a week to pick a jury because there was a cop, a Durham cop, who wanted to stay on the jury. And it took me a day to get rid of him because he wanted to stay on that jury. So Carlos was found not guilty after 3 weeks, and he's doing very well as a welder now. In this book, we did a little book tour, and we both signed in this book because it's his story. The first book in the series, The Girl Who Wore a Hockey Helmet, is mainly about Star, and that picture is Lee Charns, my brother, his picture of my daughter, Willow. But the story doesn't have anything to do with Willow, and it has very little to do with hockey, other than Star, when she was a teenager, was having mental health problems. She later would be diagnosed as being bipolar. But her dad didn't know how to deal with her, and he was trying the best he could. He gave her a Red Wings old beat-up hockey helmet, and when she was getting manic, he told her to put it on, and she did, and it helped her. And I think some of it is the stink from hockey helmets, and just this feeling of comfort. So even when she was an adult lawyer with her medication that she didn't always stay on, which was a problem, she wore that helmet. And that's where the title comes from. And I'd like to read you just a very little bit, because this gives you a sense of, while I'm writing about things that are very real and painful, I try to do it in a lighthearted way, even though we're dealing with serious topics. So, Chapter 1. The Honorable Owen Otis O'Brien, Chief Superior Court Judge of Randleman County, was buried with his black judicial robe today. He had been blown to pieces when his canary yellow Lincoln Town Car exploded on the second day of our trial. The vanity license plate, Judge O, survived the blast. Upon learning of our judge's demise, my client and I laughed out loud in the courtroom. The stenographer turned and stared, so did the clerk, deputies, jurors, Lumbee Defense Committee members, and journalists scribbling quotes for the Randleman Journal and Fayetteville Times. Luckily, TV cameras were banned from the courtroom. Cops wouldn't know sarcasm if it bit them on the ass. Stupid as it was, I couldn't stop myself. That laugh may have contributed to my being charged with capital murder today, 2 days after my courtroom outburst and hours after the judge's funeral. I sit on a metal bench in this tiny holding cell in the catacombs beneath the courthouse, unable to make bail. Everyone calls me Star. I'm short, more than attractive enough for government work, according to my ex-husband. I have razor-cut black hair. That day in court, I wore a tan Halston jacket, short skirt, and medium heels. My tall but not too tall, leathery-faced, green-eyed, maroon-haired Lumbee Indian client, Jimmy Ray Oxendine, stood next to me. He wore the navy blue Kmart polyester suit I paid for. They called Jimmy Ray the vigilante cop car bomber, the Billy Jack of Randleman. He was on trial for blowing up a deputy's car to avenge the killing of a Lumbee boy by the cops. I laughed at a perverse sense of justice only a public defender could understand. We're generally regarded as sickos and anti-authority freaks who easily find humor in death and sorrow. And Judge O'Brien, the highest judicial authority in Randleman County, and renowned groper of women who work in the courthouse, was dead. And I made my character, Star, bipolar because I've suffered with serious mental health issues since I was a kid. And one of the things she's doing, which many of us do, we don't like the side effects and we stop our medication. Well, she's in big doo-doo because she wasn't on the meds. So, not only was I writing fiction and representing folks and not being the favorite lawyer of the police in Durham, I was investigating the FBI. I started in 1983. I read a book called The FBI and Martin Luther King Jr., and it was about all the horrible things that our government did to King. Warrantless wiretapping, warrantless bugging, threats, poison pen letters. It just was awful. And it made me wonder, because I wasn't a very good law student, but I had curiosity. What was the FBI doing to the Earl Warren Court, which was very liberal and I assumed J. Edgar Hoover hated? So I was naive. I thought, how hard could this be? And it was easy. I did a Freedom of Information Act request and I said, give me all your files on the Supreme Court. And they didn't get back to me, so I wrote them another letter. Give me all your files on the Supreme Court. And I think it took 3 letters and finally said, we don't have any files about the Supreme Court. And I thought at the bottom, they probably wanted to put a smiley face. And it's like they poked me in the eye, you know, when your kid sibling whacks you, they hit you in the arm. And that's what I felt the FBI was doing to me, and it pissed me off. And it seems like a lot of the things in my life, it's just in my gut, this ain't right. This ain't right. So I thought it wasn't right. So what I did is I requested every single file from every deceased justice going back to the 1930s.
No.
And the law clerks. And everyone else I could think of. And I requested my own file. Just take that. So they sent me my own file, and it was thousands of pages long. And they said I was the #1 Freedom of Information Act requester in the whole country. And they said it like it was a bad thing. I was kind of proud when I saw that. So in my own file, I find a search slip, which is basically a receipt, which shows what files they found. And what did they find? They found a bunch of files about the Supreme Court. Not only that, a bunch of the FBI administrators got together, and I had asked for a fee waiver because I thought there's gonna be thousands of pages at 10 cents a page. They're gonna break the bank. So I'm gonna publish my findings. Well, I never published anything other than a letter to the editor. So that fee waiver committee said those records are in the public interest, they have historical interest, and then someone else at the FBI told me they didn't exist. So I take the exact file number that is in that search slip and I request the file on the Supreme Court. In about another year, 3,000 pages come, and there's all sorts of bombshells in there. The articles I wrote, it was on the front page of the Durham Morning Herald, and then the New York Times picked it up. And then I thought, okay, if I'm gonna publish, I'm gonna really publish. So I've got a lawyer, best friend Paul Green, and we took turns suing the FBI, and we hit a big time. And I wrote this book, Book and Gavel, FBI Wiretaps, Bugs, Informers, and the Supreme Court. And that was 1992. And one of the big bombshells in here that I found was that a liberal Democrat, so for all you Republicans in here, I'm gonna be banging on some liberal Democrats. LBJ, and Justice Abe Fortas. But before Fortas got on the court, he was just one of the best lawyers in the whole US of A. He got picked by the Supreme Court to represent a felon in Florida called Clarence Earl Gideon. You might have read the book Gideon's Trumpet about Gideon. He got convicted without a lawyer of a felony. And he wrote to the Supreme Court and said, this isn't right. He had it in his gut that I should have a lawyer. And the Supreme Court took his case, but he didn't have a lawyer. So they asked Abe Fortas, will you take the case? And he did. And he won that case before he got on the court. Abe Fortas gets on the court because he had represented Lyndon Baines Johnson in political problems that the president had. And Fortas, his view of his ethical responsibilities was kind of on the shady side. He would go to the White House and advise the president. Can you imagine one of our Supreme Court justices now showing up in the White House and giving advice on cases and everything else?
Yes, all of it.
Well, that's what Fortas did. So he was ahead of his time. And again, he was a liberal Democrat. So what was going on at the time, we had someone called, remember Jimmy Hoffa?
Yeah.
Who's the boss? Marcus Red Fox, Telegraph Avenue. No one's seen him? Well, this was when he was still around, and it was a warrantless bugging case involving Jimmy, his lawyer, and then Muhammad Ali and his lawyer, and the FBI is doing warrantless buggings. And Hoover is about to get caught, and he's gonna get spanked. So what does he do? Well, who is the Attorney General going after Jimmy? Robert F. Kennedy. And how did Kennedy and LBJ get along? They were rivals. So the way they pitched this to Fortas, you can help LBJ and you can blame all this on Bobby. Let's blame it on Bobby. And Fortas says, okay. So he told the FBI what was going on in the conference room. He told the FBI when the court was going to rule, what they were going to rule, and he lobbied on cases that he had disqualified himself and recused himself. And when I got these FBI memos, I said, I don't really believe the FBI. They lied to me. Why wouldn't they lie about Fortas? So at that time, Fortas's papers were under seal at Yale, And I had to get special permission from his wife. Is his wife really gonna give me permission to look at these files? She did. I mean, who am I? I'm just a little guy from Durham. He never published anything. And she gave me permission. I went to Yale and I found there's all the FBI memos that the FBI told about. And it proved that Fortis had committed the greatest ethical violations in the history of the Supreme Court. I think even to this day. Now, some stuff now rivals it, but really, you know, this is pretty bad. This is bad stuff. That's what's in Cloak and Gavel. That was 10 years into the litigation. Was I done? No, because I didn't believe they gave me everything. They had lied so many times, I didn't believe they were telling the truth. Oh, you have everything. I said, what about Hoover's official and confidential files? His special files that he kept in his office and he used for blackmail. You didn't, where's the index to that? We don't have an index on that. Wrong. The guy who was the reader on Cloak and Gavel, a professor, one of the best researchers and FBI historians, had an index that he got from the FBI years ago. So he gives that to me, and my wizard of a lawyer, Paul Green, who liked Wheel of Fortune, says, let's play Wheel of Fortune. He said, look at that, look at this list, it's alphabetized, look at the F. There's 10 characters. I said, what does that mean? He said, play Wheel of Fortune. Fortas, comma, A-B-E, Fortis A. So we file a motion, we go to Greensboro where we're suing the FBI, and I just love seeing all those FBI agents come because we sued. And there's some satisfaction after they've lied to me for decades and seeing something happen eventually. So in the hallway, one of the agents hands me a memo, and it's 5 pages long, and it's a blackmail memo. And the first page is, there's an FBI informant that says Abe Fortas had sex with a teenage boy. And under the horrendous programs they had at the time, one was called Homosexuals in Government, to rid our government, federal government, of gay people. This was supposed to be investigated and sent to the Attorney General. So that's what the memo said to do. What Hoover said at the bottom, he said, no, the number 2 in command at the FBI is gonna go see Fortas and give him this memo. And that's how they did the subtle blackmail. We're gonna keep your secret, don't worry. And so they gave the memo to Fortas. He denied having sex with a teenage boy. And they said, we're never gonna investigate this. Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. We're never gonna investigate this. And your secret is safe with us. And it was until that day in the hallway. And so, dang it, I already wrote a book. I was tired of footnotes. So I did another one. FBI snitches, blackmail, and obscene ethics at the court. And because these files actually disappeared for a couple of years, there was some researchers that were looking for them. Here they are. Take that, FBI. I'm gonna put what I based this on in this book. So I rewrote Cloak and Gavel. Cloak and Gavel has more footnotes than text. This has more text than footnotes. It's, I think, a better read and it's more up to date. But if you're really into the Supreme Court, there's more history in there on some of the great cases of our day. So someone asked me, what gives you hope? You've been banging your head against the wall. I said, well, you know, I got to the bottom of these mysteries, and who was I? I'm not a trained historian. I'm just a lawyer. I'm a lawyer with a typewriter. I had a Smith Corona. I got a computer. And I'm continuing to research this because there's more to find out. They're still hiding stuff. So what gives me hope? To see all of you on a Monday night, when you could be doing something more exciting, you're here hearing about history and all the things that I know all of you do in your lives to fight back and to stand up and to say, not in our name, and that you're not gonna hide things from us, that we're US citizens and we have a right to know this, and you're not gonna hide it from me. And so whether it's the Epstein files or something else, the things that you're all doing in your communities in Livonia, that's what gives me hope. So I'm happy to answer some questions and sign some books, and please consider making a donation. And you can do it, it's at Learn Livonia, correct? And there's a QR code. The books are free, and I hope you'll take them. If you have a book club, take a bunch of them, particularly the updated one. There's a lot of them. And then I'm just thankful that you're all here.
Yeah. The new generation of lawyers, you started out and you took a step at a time until you got to the point that you feel that you were accomplishing something. Was still, are the lawyers coming out of law school today, do they have the same kind of approach that you took?
Not to go to jail necessarily, but what I find, they're smarter, and they're learning from doing the thing I did, learning from Karen Bethea Shields. You know, she's still practicing. All these years later, she's practiced for 50 years, and she's still taking death penalty cases and still swinging in court. And you know, she's one of my legal heroes. And so I think there's a lot more folks doing police misconduct work in North Carolina at the time. Other than the Laughlins, I didn't know anyone. I didn't know anyone that did it. And so now what I see with the rise of nonprofits that are doing civil rights litigation is that what gives me hope is the new generation is doing it in a smarter way. I mean, I was just raging. I mean, about the FBI and about what, you know, trying to keep me out of the bar. I didn't do it very smart. Like I said, I wasn't a good client. And I think the young folks coming out of law school, they're doing some really good work. And when I see the stuff that's going on with the federal government and I see these lawsuits, a lot of them are coming out of North Carolina. And it's people that, you know, they're young and they're doing important litigation. So that gives me hope.
Right here.
Yeah, so I may have the sort of a Pollyanna-ish view of this, but when I'm looking at the purge of prosecutors right now, and I'm looking at the purge of some FBI agents that were involved with the George Floyd events, and I'm thinking to myself that maybe there's some ethic both in the prosecutors' offices and in DOJ offices, as well as in the FBI, that might make this backfire on them. From your experience, you're going to probably tell me that that's not likely at all.
If the courts start punishing these Department of Justice lawyers that don't know what they're doing, that don't have any experience, and are saying, frankly, crazy things in court, they're just making it up. Like the 14th Amendment, the argument that it doesn't cover kids that are born in this country, there's no support for it, not in the Constitution or in any of the laws. Why doesn't the judge do what happens to me in civil rights litigation, and it happened once? The judge says, I don't think you have support for that argument. And he hit me up, it's called Rule 11, and they can make you pay the other side's legal offenses, and they could have bankrupted me. Luckily, I had a pro bono lawyer, and he represented me, and we got that stricken. It was a very conservative, right-wing judge from a different county, and he frankly didn't like me. And why don't these judges, including Supreme Court justices, whack these prosecutors that come into court and make things up? They have no support for it, for some of the things they're saying. If they don't get a spine, we're not gonna get help. Because taking some insurance defense lawyer and making them a prosecutor and then sending them into court to do what they will, there has to be consequences. So if the judicial branch doesn't grow a spine, we're all gonna get run over. So I think it's possible that something might happen.
You're saying, why don't the judges do that? So I want to know, why do you think they don't?
Because
Why aren't they doing that?
most judges come from a prosecutorial background. They come from a background that defers to the government. They bow down. No one has ever bowed down to me. No judge ever in 43 years. So it's bias, it's institutional, it's the culture. I mean, they all went to these highfalutin private law schools, and it's a club. I mean, one of the worst death penalty cases I ever worked on, there was a drunk lawyer that represented my client, and how did he get the case? This was back years ago, and it couldn't happen now. He got the case because they went to the same country club in this little town of Hickory. So, culture.
To what end? So the judges are going to do nothing. They have to have some vision of where this goes. To what end does a judge allow nonsense in his courtroom repeatedly from the same defendant, or representing the same defendant, over and over again, various judges? To what end?
It's support of a system that is not fair often, and it's a system that rewards keeping your mouth shut and acting in a certain way. And it doesn't benefit people that aren't like them, frankly.
So to their own benefit.
It's the benefit of the system. If they're a lower court judge, they want to be an appeals court judge. If they're an appeals court judge, they want to be on the Supreme Court. Once they're at the Supreme Court, they have no excuse. In fact, we have judges that start changing their views because they're free to do that with a lifetime appointment. But, you know, a lot of views are baked in by that time, and if they're pro-prosecution, then they're gonna stay pro-prosecution, whether they have someone that has no business making that argument. Why they do it is a mystery to me. I mean, as much as I've looked into the Supreme Court and why they do what they do, I still don't get it. I mean, why would you appoint a known alcoholic that's drinking a fifth of rum a night to represent a man charged with murdering two people? Because they're friends. And then he defended himself when we had him up on the stand. And it wasn't until we found a deathbed confession by the lawyer admitting he was drinking in court. So why they do what they do, you know, that's why I write fiction, because then I can speculate. But I can't speculate in these books, and I don't. I put out some proof. Yes.
I'm curious to know the 3,000 pages that were given from a FOIA request. How much is typically redacted? Because I know they clean before they actually issue FOIA.
Yes. Well, in the 3,000 pages, a lot of it, since it was older, I got a lot of it. I have hundreds of thousands of pages in there at UNC Wilson Library and at Villanova. So there are hundreds of pages of records from a request where they said they didn't have anything. So it just depends, like stuff where the justices were picked up in wiretaps in the 40s, talking to their buddies. So they wiretap my brother or me, and he walks in on the call, and I'm the judge, and they get everything I said. So there's hundreds of pages of FBI wiretaps from the 40s that have no redactions. But the ones in the 60s, they won their case. How did I litigate on a national security classified case? The FBI goes in secret in the CIA and they meet with the judge and they tell him why I can't have the record. I don't get to go in there. And then they say, this is 1966. Well, it's national security classified, you can't have it. But I did find out they opened William O. Douglas, Justice Douglas's mail in a CIA program. There are things I found out, but then they wouldn't tell me what was said. In the end, I found out a lot. And just by not giving up and just, being someone that didn't take no for an answer. So that's my superpower, being pig-headed. Yes?
You mentioned there's some individuals that are continuing some of the work that you've been doing. Are there organizations, that are doing this as well? Or I mean, I've heard about the ACLU, of course, and some of the Public Law Center. Are there other organizations that are doing
Yes,
this kind
there's-
of good work?
Yeah, there's a group called Emancipate North Carolina. They're doing it. There's other groups in North Carolina that are doing it, and there's groups that are doing FOIA, Freedom of Information Act work, following up on some of the things I'm doing.
Bill, may I have a final question?
Oh, sure, you can have the last one, Denise.
So I'm wondering about the personal cost of this work, like to your relationships, your family, because I know there is one.
Yeah, and when I started doing the police misconduct work, I was scared. I don't take a drink, a sip of beer and get in the car, still. Because I know they know who I am, because my wife got a call, this was probably 10 years ago, and someone at the magistrate's office was looking out for me and said, your husband's down here and the police are mighty happy, they're having a little party. And she said, well, he's right here, so that's not him. It turned out it was a public defender. But they thought it was me, and they were living it up because they thought they had me. And that happened to a prosecutor in Durham who prosecuted some cops for corruption, for taking the cocaine in the evidence locker and using it and setting people up. He sent him to prison, but he was a drunk. And they waited for him, and they nailed him, and they ran him out of office. And my boss told me about that, and I remembered that lesson. So the things I can do, keep my inspection current, the things you all are doing is my brake lights are fine, and I check. And that's what I can control. When I was a little baby lawyer, I was terrified. I was scared. So thank you.
Let's give to have someone like this sharing conversations, to open up our eyes for those of us that need them opened, or to share the stories that we can take out and share with other people. I can't begin to tell you how I'm proud that you went to Livonia schools if it had only been Franklin.
Could I ask you, the folks that want an inscription, even though I know you, what I've learned is it really would help is if you write down what inscription name you want in the spelling, and that avoids problems. And I've learned that's one of the things I've learned.
So we've got the group from Learn that'll be here if you want to take a book and bring it up, have him autograph it. If you have questions for Alex, I just can't tell you. I could listen to you all night, and I'm going to meet you here tomorrow for breakfast.
So
at
we're
9:30.
coming here for breakfast at 9:30. My son,
Me.
Bill, Steve, and so if anyone else wants to come and continue the conversation, please do, because these are great folks. And their staff are wonderful, and I'm looking forward to breakfast already.